Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed meeting you, and I enjoyed my trip up here. I'm from the Central Valley of California, Hanford, so it's right in between Fresno and Bakersfield. I appreciate you taking the time to come today. Like Dr. Ploss said, I'm an internal medicine physician in clinical practice in Hanford, so I see patients 4 days a week using Cerner to do that, and my Central Valley leadership developed a role for me as a kind of physician champion and has given me administrative time, not for executive purposes, but specifically to support other providers, and it's kind of turned into supporting staff and really doing some workflow type stuff, but really to provide provider level to support to the providers to maximize efficiency and usage of Cerner. Like Dr. Ploss said, really I got to this point by just really learning as much as I could, and I've been to Cerner some and had some additional training. So I'm really excited to share what I have today. Just to give you a brief overview of the presentation, I'm going to start with the presentation that I gave up at corporate a few months ago. Basically, it's just sort of a vision of quality and efficiency and sort of looking towards the future. This process for me started when I was looking into healthy registries and learning about MACRA and all the new quality stuff that's coming out. And in my mind, I'm like, how are we going to do this on top of everything that we're already doing? So I put a lot of time and research into my practice with my staff, really trying to develop something that could be functional, mostly with a goal of trying to get the staff engaged to do as much as they could to allow me to do the parts that only I can do to take care of the patient. So I'm going to kind of go over that to start, and then I'm going to go briefly over some of the analytic tool that's available to really evaluate how we're using Cerner and opportunities for improvement. And then the last part of the presentation, I'm going to go basically some demonstration of some quick tips and tricks, if you want to call it that, and hopefully we'll have time in the end for questions. What I'd like to start with is sort of give you a picture of two different clinic experiences, specifically kind of from the provider's point of view. The first visit's going to be a volume-driven visit. So you're focused on the reason the patient is seen as to what is the matter with you. So restrained by throughput, the provider or staff might feel too busy or overwhelmed to really delve into the patient's chronic diseases. The second visit is a quality-driven visit, or what matters to you. Our staff is motivated to prepare for and participate in caring for our patient at the time of the visit. And our provider is able to benefit from a team approach to help our patient get all they need. And I'll then move on, like I mentioned, to demonstrate some functionality in Cerner that can help you and your staff locate information more efficiently and document your quality care more easily. So we're going to go through briefly a patient scenario, start with a patient scenario. So this is your sister. She's diabetic. If you don't have a sister, you can just imagine that you have a sister and she's diabetic. She had her last diabetes check sometime last year. Her last A1C was 7.5 and her LDL was 122. She saw her primary provider in June for heavy menses and was referred to gynecology. She saw her gynecologist and then had a hysterectomy. He ordered her mammogram at that time. She saw her cardiologist for surgical clearance, was started on an ACE inhibitor and a statin. Her repeat LDL was 68. He recommended that she take over-the-counter aspirin. She has her labs done in an outside lab. She saw her family eye doctor last month and was happy to let you know she doesn't have damage to her eyes. She quit smoking last year, but started a few weeks ago after her mother passed away from colon cancer. She called the office a few weeks ago to make an appointment. So in the typical volume-driven visit, she calls for an appointment. The front office staff checks your sister in. The medical assistant takes the vitals, performs the medication review, and reviews currently recorded medical, social, and family history on the intake form. Medical provider reviews the intake, interviews and examines your sister, prescribes her antibiotics for bronchitis, addresses her colon cancer concerns, refers her to gastroenterologist, and then advises her to follow up in 1 month for diabetes. Does that sound like a pretty typical flow visit? So scenario 2, moving on to the hamster with the blue ribbon here. In this situation, same scenario, your sister calls for an appointment. The office staff preps the schedule and identifies that your sister is diabetic. They also prep the chart looking at the labs that were done from an outside lab. They take a look at the health maintenance section and making sure that that information is entered appropriately in the chart. They see the eye exam record is available and satisfies that the patient has had diabetic retinopathy screening, and identify that the colonoscopy, mammogram, and pap smear show is due. So by the time the patient arrives, the front office staff checks your sister in, but they know that she's diabetic. Medical assistant takes the vitals, note that her blood pressure is elevated above target, and retakes her blood pressure manually. They update the social history to include smoking, adds weight management and smoking cessation counseling to the encounter. They also update her surgical history to indicate that she had a total hysterectomy, so she's no longer due for a pap smear. The medication history is updated to include the new medications, the ACE inhibitor, statin, and the aspirin. And then a point of care A1C is obtained that shows an A1C of 6.9. So then the medical provider reviews the intake, including the updated histories, interviews and examines your sister, provides supportive care for her diagnosis, reviews her colon cancer concerns and makes a referral, and then orders follow-up labs and has the front desk set an appointment for follow-up for her diabetes. As the patient leaves, the office staff books the appointment, requests the old records for the studies that were done, handles the GI referral, and then when the incoming results come, make sure that they enter it appropriately into the chart to satisfy the health maintenance section. This is a tool, if you've seen the Healthy Registries tool in the chart. These are the metrics that the Adventist has chosen certain metrics to kind of follow. Basically what this slide is demonstrating, and what I really want you to get out of those two patient scenarios, is that in both the visit, the provider evaluates your sister and makes a diagnostic decision related to her symptoms. So superficially for the provider, the visit doesn't really look a whole lot different. But all of what took place in the background actually makes a significant difference in capturing her quality of care. So in the volume-driven visit, none of the Adventist quality metrics followed in health registries were met. In the quality-driven visit, 18 of 20 of those were met. And then just in general, basic quality metrics, crossover metrics, are things like taking a blood pressure or measuring a BMI. You can also see that about 8 times as many of those measures were met in the second visit. So again, the idea here is really, if you think about it, there's more work involved, but for the provider, the basic experience for the provider is the same. Which MA would you want to be? There's a different type of work involved, but how would it feel to be a more active participant in caring for our patients? In this case, you know she's diabetic and what it means to her. You care to review the chart and update the history because the staff understands why it's important. You're motivated to document because you're a valued resource and part of a care team. Which provider would you want to be? How would it look like to care for patients with this type of staff engagement and motivation? Would you feel empowered to now focus your knowledge and expertise in the way you desire? Would there be a sense of relief that the burden is not all on you? And next, which patient would you like to be? How would it feel if anywhere you were seen in Adventist Health, the staff showed an interest in your diabetes and your overall well-being? How would it feel to have a team supporting you and doing your part to keep your diabetes under control? So where are we now? There's a nationwide focus on provider burnout and compassion fatigue. There are discussions about how the mandated EHR are at the core of this burnout. Have we enabled the EHR to be a barrier in both efficiently delivering and accurately reflecting our quality care? Are we so distracted by data entry that we've forgotten how to care for our patients as a whole? I look at this slide and think, I didn't sign up for this when at 14 I held my grandmother's hand as she took her last breath in her battle against breast cancer. I vowed to help the sick and dying, but also to help others live. Sometimes, these days, I feel as if I'm drowning. So the next question is, how do you convince someone drowning that the ocean is beautiful? So I would suggest that the first step is to stop trying to do things the way we always have when our tools and expectations look so different. We can stop enabling the technology to be a barrier and invest in learning new functionality that has been created to support our personalized approach to patients. We can start with small changes that can make a significant improvement in our efficiency. But most importantly, let's remember why we are all here. So first step, throw a life preserver. So what I'm talking about here is redistribution of workflow, kind of going back to the 2 different types of visits. Technology changed the way that we see our patients. So not only is there a third party in the room, our workflow sometimes turns into checking boxes, allowing us to keep our back turned to our patient. Our language changed from I will, or please do, to I need to propose, you need to sign, and then I will. Our staff was given positions placing restrictions on what they might have been empowered to do. So what might look like a lack of engagement or initiative might just be the situation that the EHR has placed our staff in. We need to remember that the patient is the most important, and the electronic record is only a tool we use to document that care. We're talking about empowerment, so creating and empowering a care team that will collectively deliver the highest quality of care to the patients in Adventist Health. Start by looking for adaptable leaders among our current staff that will step up, comply, be examples and teachers to their peers. So one example is Meaningful Use told us that providers have to add education to prove we're using the electronic record in a meaningful way. But not that no one else can, especially when our staff understand how their actions can benefit our patient, your sister. I just wanted to take a quick break here and say this is my team. We have referrals and reception and our LVN that's shared. My MA is here on the left. And when we instituted a process and really did a lot of troubleshooting, trying to see if this could work and what it could look like, really investing in education in the staff. The MA on the right, she actually was riding the bus 20 miles to work and working 2 jobs in order to take care of her single kids. But she'd been an MA for 20 years in family practice, and she didn't even understand what a microalbumin was or why it was important or really understand what an A1C. So by really teaching her and empowering her, she's really stepped up and is very, very happy to have a more active role in taking care of patients. And they've now become teachers for our facility and teaching them how to use Cerner effectively and also teaching to the workflow that we've developed. So next step would be teach them how to swim. So likewise, what might look like a lack of initiative or engagement may translate to a lack of clear direction. We need to take advantage of each and every solution that's available to support us in documenting effectively. I can speak for myself that I'm a creature of habit. It's hard to implement change, especially in the setting of a busy clinical practice. When it comes to learning to change the way that I spend time in Cerner every day, every patient, it's easy to overvalue what I will lose, which is time and productivity, but undervalue what I would gain. And I can testify that the downstream effect of deliberate learning is huge. So one thing for certain is that treading water eventually can get exhausting. Now we're talking here about education. So as Dr. Plass alluded to, we can identify our peer leaders in quality efficiency and learn from their knowledge. Develop a collaborative process to motivate providers and staff to use the EHR as a welcome and valuable resource to capture our quality care in an efficient manner. We can prioritize mastering the tool that we use to care for our patients and commit to ongoing learning, just as we adjust to best evidence-based clinical practice. So the 2 main reasons for dissatisfaction in the EHR is really lost productivity. It translates into 2 things, spending more time on documentation or seeing fewer patients. So this chart is showing how physicians typically spend their time. So the 3 main things that we do in the EHR as providers is chart review, orders, and documentation. So this next slide shows the variability. So this is internal medicine in the same clinic. So what you can see in this slide is you have one provider that's spending 34 minutes per patient in the electronic record, and you might have another provider that's spending 12 minutes per patient in the record. Now, the important thing, to sort of make note of here is that when you're looking at the amount of time spent in the record, it doesn't necessarily mean that quality care is being delivered or quality documents are being created. But this slide is really just meant to show that there's a large amount of variability between the way that we're using the electronic record to care for our patients. So I know some of you have seen this before. This is the advanced analytic tool. So basically it can look at those 3 areas that we spend our time, chart review, documentation, and orders. The blue bar sort of, for this virtual cardiologist, can show that she's spending a significant amount of time compared to her peers in chart review, which isn't necessarily in and of itself a bad thing. And then it's giving you a time curve showing the time during the day and when she's most active in the chart. So this is what the advanced analytical tool would call a high opportunity user. So this provider is spending 40 minutes per patient. 25% of her time is after hours. And you can see what she's doing here. She's showing up at 7 in the morning, finish at 5, and document for 4 hours at night, finishing up their notes. So when you're really talking about time, like this is this is huge. I mean, that's quality, that's interfering with quality of life. This is sort of another view, a close-up view of chart review, documentation, and orders. You can see that this provider is, well above the average time. And really, I want to back up a minute, and what we're talking about here in comparison to peers is if you were using the most updated technology and functionality that's been created that has really solved some of those efficiency problems. So that's kind of what they're comparing it to. This is another sort of pie chart view. High opportunity users, you can see this is like the 2012 functionality of Power Orders, Power Notes, and the document viewer. So this slide is not to go over. I just want to show you that the corporate initiative here is they've developed a prescription approach to really take a look at how our providers are using the system, identify down to how they're doing chart review, documentation, and placing orders, and if they're doing it in a particular way, it's sort of like if this, then teach this. And our AOS, your AOS support has become very, very well versed in this. And I will say that this prescription approach works. So if they approach you and want to say, hey, I'd like to show you a few things and go over your advanced data with you, I strongly recommend that you try to give them a few minutes of your time, because there's definitely opportunity using this approach to shave some time that you're spending in the electronic record. This is a more detailed view of sort of the if this, then this sort of thing. So the prescriptions is a great initiative. They're really targeting the high opportunity users in this. The really our providers that are really like that first one that I showed you, 40 minutes per patient, 25% of hours after time. So I actually spent some time with a provider this morning, and she said, well, I just need to start working on weekends. I just need to put time in. I'm like, no, you need to work smarter, not, take advantage of what's available. Like, the solution is not work harder. That's not the solution. It's find a better way. I just want to, disclaimer, this is a slide from Cerner. It is completely coincidental, or maybe ironic is the word, but the man is on the red side and the happy woman is on the left. So this is, this was not, there's no hidden message here. But what I'd like to point out is that the advanced tool and the corporate initiative using the AOS is really, their main focus is to start really on these high opportunity users. And then you have, the ones that we talked about, maybe trying to engage some of our providers who are really efficient, really knowledgeable, that we could all learn from. But what we call these is the silent sufferers, So the bulk of our providers really live here in the middle, right? You say, well, what about the majority of us? What can we do? So this is actually survey data. Some of you took the survey. I really appreciate that. And your survey data was very similar to this. But basically, it's saying how you're using the system. So the analytics tool can tell us, but this is directly from providers. So the gray contents to look for information using PowerNote, and then the entering orders from folders and favorites. That is the less efficient way to perform those tasks. So I think this slide just kind of verifies that we all, that we do have opportunities to improve. What this is showing is that some of us might not be all, doing it the old way. We might be sort of a hybrid mix. So that kind of puts us in the middle. We're not standing out, but we could all have an opportunity to improve. So this is an interesting slide. Speaking of time spent, the most common reason for dissatisfaction. So 60% of us are dissatisfied with the amount of time that it takes. 30% documenting after clinical hours. And again, going back to that slide of the two main reasons for dissatisfaction, the vast majority are saying, I can't see the amount of patients I want to, it's slowing me down, or I have to spend additional time to see the amount of patients that I would like to see. This is kind of interesting too, is that 75% feel that we're actually using Cerner effectively. So I kind of think that that's maybe a little bit of complacency. So when you're talking about motivation to change, like, we actually feel like we're doing a pretty good job, but we just hate it. I mean, it's just taking way too long. I think we can all agree that we would like change. We would like change to happen. But when it comes down to who wants to change, sometimes it's a different story. And I think that previous slide can illustrate that just a little bit. Like, if we basically feel like we're doing all right, then maybe we want change, but when it comes to change, there might be a little hesitation. So these next two slides are actually, this is my working with a provider. This was a very efficient user, 8 minutes per patient. Actually does a really good job. I showed him a couple of things in about 30 minutes, and within 1 month, he was saving 1.5 minutes per patient. So just showing him like little things, what I'm gonna show you at the end when we move on. This is actually me. This was like before and after. So 4 minutes per patient placing my orders, and I'm supposed to like be using all the new stuff and like all of this, but I'm a creature of habit, like I said. So I was still using the old folders on the old workflow, the old table of contents. So finally, it took me a lot to do it because I really thought I was doing a good job. So I converted to the quick orders page, and within a month was saving 1.5 minutes per patient, and that's a significant time saving. It's a significant time change for me. So it was really hard for me. I started and then I kind of gave up because I was making mistakes and I was too busy and I didn't really have time. But once I really like buckled down and invested the time, that one change for me really changed my whole day. I think we can agree too that we don't all necessarily feel like we get the information about updates or the support to learn new things. But the good news is that the majority of us want to learn. So I just want to show a little video here. Just take a quick break.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something?
Help! 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 Help!
I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is it?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
I love that video. So we talked a little bit about some of the opportunities for change, and really most of us want, are interested in change and want to change. But change does require investment, and it requires action. So next we're going to move on to kind of quick tips and tricks. This isn't meant to be a training session for you to learn the new things, and I know there's variation in how we use the system. So if some of this you already know, just kind of ignore. I think there will be at least, everyone can leave with at least 1 or 2 little tidbits. I think sometimes we don't realize how just one little shortcut can make a huge impact on our day. I know we get really excited in my office when we learn something new. We're like, wow, look at this, it saves 3 clicks, this is awesome. This is just a slide to sort of show that the ambulatory summary is kind of the second functionality. So we started with 2013 Cerner with the gray table of contents, and then they gave us the ambulatory summary, which was really awesome because we could make it all the pretty colors that we wanted to, and it really helped. And now we've moved on to the workflow view. So this just shows you how to sort of pull it over and set it up. Now, this is where the first big advancement in Cerner solutions comes in. So who here went live or started using Cerner in 2013? Anybody? 2014? 15? Yeah. So that gray table of, so this is really an advancement, and Cerner has self-admitted that they kind of got it wrong. In the beginning, they developed a product that kind of assumed that all providers see patients in the same way. So that gray table of contents is static, like you're kind of all of a sudden sort of forced to sort of go through things in a particular way. So they created the workflow view, and the beauty for providers about the workflow view is that it's completely customizable. So Dr. Ploss is a specialist, as a cardiologist. He might not want to see, a bunch of that stuff. So you can get rid of stuff you don't want to see. And then you can organize what you do want to see that fits the way that you like to see it. So you're no longer sort of put into a box. You have complete flexibility about how you view information. So that's a huge advancement. So this is when we say table of contents, it's this gray table of contents. This is the black hole. This is where if you feel like you're clicking or switching pages a lot, it's most likely because you're looking for information over here. So this piece of the chart has been completely replaced by the new workflow. So first step is to try to get used to the new workflow, customize it, make it yours, make it fit with the way that you see the patients. The next step is, and I want to just point out that one of the misconceptions in my region is that this workflow is DynDoc. So if you're a dynamic documentation. So if you're a PowerNote user, this is not for you. But this clinic workflow is for everybody. So this is basically your chart review. So when we go back to those 3 ways that you spend your time, chart review, documentation, and orders, this next section is really going to be about chart review. It's how do you find that information in the chart? I know that some of you responded, it's not easy to find information, particularly scanned documents. So this is really your chart review, and this is the solution to be able to find things in an easier way. Now, if you are a dynamic document user, if you create your notes using dynamic documentation, if you pin that table of contents, then you have the ability to use this contextual view. I hope all of you that use DynDoc have this or have at least tried it. So what this gives you is the ability to actually type or dictate into your document at the same time as you're scrolling down here and you're reviewing your documents. And the neat thing with this new technology is, again, if you're using dynamic documentation, now you have the option to view your last note and just drag and drop the information from your last note into your new note. So that's a really good tool. And it does indicate where it came from, so it's not, it has a little footnote that says that it was created. The workflow is really going into chart review, and they've really made it easier to look for what you want to look for. The workflow view that you see is basically just how the information looks. The information in the background is all the same. It's just a different view, so you're just viewing it differently. Again, if you like to see the documents in your old view, how you're used to seeing them in the list, all you have to do is hyperlink on that word documents. You don't have to go over to the gray table of contents. You just hit the word documents and it takes you right there. And the other solution that I like to point out with the document viewing is that you actually have the option to I'm getting confused. You actually have the option to filter your documents. So I have a lot of different filters. So I only see referrals, only see health maintenance, only see outside scanned information into one folder. So I don't know if you guys have ever done back to sift through your documents. So this is sort of another view of the hyperlink. So from the workflow, if you want to go to your old view specifically, I know we all love results review page, and that's not going away. It's a great flow sheet. You can actually just hit the word labs or hit the word diagnostics, and it takes you right to that results review page. If you are in the workflow, you can tag labs or tag radiology results to pull into your note later if you're a dynamic documentation user. So speaking of going to the results review, again, when you're living on the workflow and you have that gray table of contents pinned, you hyperlink through there, and this is your results review page. What I want to point out on this page is the ambulatory tab. There's actually a lot of useful information that lives on this ambulatory tab. Specifically for primary care, you have a diabetes section. So this is basically any information that's ad hoc in or entered by your staff is available. So you have your diabetes, like foot exam, eye exam can be entered in here. And then this is something really, this was a great solution for us. We have a lot of frustration sort of tracking referrals over time. The patient might come and say, well, you referred me, who did you refer me to, or did I get that appointment? From this ambulatory page, you can actually see, this is kind of view only, but at least it gives you the date. It tells you where they were sent, and can give you information about that appointment right there from the ambulatory page. This next slide is showing your home medications. From the workflow page, you can see the medications the patient is currently taking. You can see the compliance that was done by your staff, and now they have a new refill indicator, which still needs some work, but it's kind of, in theory, cool. If you want to do your medication reconciliation, you just hit the word outpatient, and it takes you to your reconciliation page. Now the great thing about this page is if they're not taking a medicine and you want to stop it, you just hit the red square to stop the medication. If you're a specialist and you're not really getting into the details of managing their medications, it's dithered out here because it didn't work right for me, but this acknowledge remaining home medicines, that'll complete your medication compliance, and then reconcile and sign. Again, if you like the old view, because this workflow view doesn't give you all of the medicines, like medications that have been stopped, if you just hit the word home medications, it takes you back to your old way of viewing the medications, and you can view all medications, all statuses from there. Moving on to documentation, the main point that I really want to make for PowerNote users, the workflow, again, is a way to view information in the chart. It really, in the end, how you create your document, it doesn't have anything to do with what you view and how you view it. The main difference is tagging information and the things that you can pull into your note. But right from here, this little drop down, right here on the workflow page, your favorite Power Notes can live right there, or you can start your Power Note right from here. You don't have to go out to the old way. But the big point of this slide is that these little back buttons here, once you've started your Power Note, anybody here use Power Note? Okay, so once you've started your Power Note, I don't know if you've ever say, oh, I forgot to look this up, or what did that note say, or what was that value, right? So once you've started your note, this little back button right here takes you right back to the workflow. So you can toggle back and forth. You can even view an old document without, and then you can just return to your note and finish. You don't have to close it out or navigate over to the toolbar. This is a big solution for thinking you have to close your notes. The other thing is there are a lot of smart templates that live in Cerner. There are a ton of them. I mean, there's so much that's available to use. These are two examples of smart templates. So little dot phrases actually can pull your last labs. They can pull all of your health maintenance information directly into your note. So if you find yourself transcribing information and writing it on a piece of paper and then typing it into your note, there are solutions, and you can, I believe, create your own. That's the basics of the documentation. And next, moving on to orders. Before placing orders, we always, I think best practice would be to make sure that we have a diagnosis for that visit that would justify placing an order. So the diagnosis and problems from the workflow is face up. You can quickly just hit this visit to identify what you want to see. You can resolve old problems. The nice thing here is that with one click you can view details of this problem. So if you really want to add comments. This is another one that specifically I think for primary care is when you're adding new diagnosis, you have the option to add as this visit or add as this visit in chronic. So if it's a problem that you're going to be seeing the patient over and over again for, it's a good idea to select the ability to add as this visit in chronic. So you don't have to add the same diagnosis over and over and over again. In my opinion, it's easier to resolve a problem than it is to continually add a new problem over and over. And then you can also filter if you don't want to see nursing diagnoses. I don't know if you have that problem here, but if your problem list is cluttered with nursing diagnosis and different things, you can actually just see medical diagnosis. But again, if you really like this old view and you like to search and pull stuff up by hitting the DX button, you can get there from here. So you have two options. And then this is the next thing with orders. This is sort of the old way to place orders. These are the folders, so this is like the less efficient way of placing orders. This is me. This is actually my favorites all put into nice little folders and little bundles, and I was like, click, 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 I'm good, And there's a solution that eliminates a lot of that clicking. So first step is building out your favorites. I just rededicated some time to favorites. I really hadn't updated my favorites since 2013, so I have to take my own advice and dedicate some time. But first step is to create favorites. So it lives here on this page. Also, it lives on your workflow page. So these are your same folders that live on your workflow page. You can also get to this page from, again, hitting the words orders and plans. This is really a tremendous tool right here, and this is your quick orders page. What this does is you can customize this, and every single folder that you have favorites in, you can open. So you don't have to even open your folder anymore. They all live face up, so it's literally just one click. The nice thing, if you put your diagnosis and problems and your orders and plans right up here in the corner, as you're just one-clicking your orders, you can, if you forgot if you're placing an order and you need to add a diagnosis, you can just do it right from here. You don't have to navigate back out to the chart. It's all in one page. Just click, 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 click. And what it does is it puts it into your, I call it the shopping cart, but it's the inbox. It puts it up into here. And then your screen's going to look like this. The key here is it's assigning diagnosis to your orders. There's a lot of frustration with providers actually de-clicking either of those because it kind of automatically assigns. If you just clear all of them, then you can easily just one by one assign the appropriate diagnosis. And then this modify takes you right back to your old, to old thing with the blue X's that you like stop, need more information, that sort of thing. This was gone for a while. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that the ability to add patient education is now back on the workflow page. You don't have to navigate up to the toolbar anymore. You actually have the opportunity to select for this visit. You can also depart your patient. I don't know if any of you depart your patient, but you can add it from the depart as well. So this is an example of when you're in Message Center. So this patient has a urine that came in and it's a positive, we'll just pretend anyway, it's a positive urine test. So I don't remember if I saw the patient for it or if I treated her for it, if she's seen for a UTI, I don't remember. So this right here, up this word summary view, by clicking the word summary view, it takes you right back to the workflow page. So I can actually open my last note, scroll down and see if I did in fact see this patient for a UTI. And then when I'm done, I just go back to inbox view, sign off on the results. So you can toggle back and forth between inbox and summary view, all within Message Center. The only caveat with that is, let's say in this patient I wanted to add an antibiotic because I didn't see her for a UTI, it was an asymptomatic. There's an issue that I'm trying to get fixed up right here. Most of the times for your results, the location is going to be different, and it's not working to change the location from within Message Center. So you actually have to navigate out to place orders and make sure it's in the right location. But this is an awesome tool to be able to view more information in the chart if you want to. If you're wondering if they have a future visit or something like that, you just toggle back and forth. It's really great. And then the next thing is when you're also viewing a result, again, the summary view lives here also. You have the opportunity to create patient letters right from here, or a consumer message right from this little button here. Saves a little, it's called mouse miles. It saves you from going all the way up to the communicate. And this is new functionality with the auto text. You now have the ability to create drop downs. This is any auto text that you create. So in this case, this is I don't send a lot of letters, but this is a letter to a patient. So I'm happy to inform you that your mammogram is normal. So I have about 4 things that live here: mammogram, pap smear, lab results, x-ray. So you can just drop down and choose the one that is appropriate for that encounter. Anybody get the CCD documents, the TOC documents cluttering up your inbox? Okay. So that's a whole different story. I do want to let you know we really worked hard to get them to go to a different place in your Message Center so it didn't clutter it up. They are very useful documents because basically what they're saying is this patient was discharged. You want to make sure they get a follow-up visit to reduce readmissions. So if you take the time to look at the transition of care, I don't know if you found that you'll see the patient's name, but if you want any additional information, you can't do anything. So you just go up here to patient match, and you can actually match the patient, and then you can navigate easily into their chart. So it saves you from having to search for the patient. This is the last big thing here. Do you have the problem here of freezing? Does the system give you weird messages and then you get the circle, right? Okay, so tap and go is awesome, and it saves time, I think in general. But with Tap and Go, when you tap in the morning, it gives you a 12-hour session. A 12-hour session meaning virtual memory. So you basically have a certain amount of memory that's allotted to you for the day. Every task that you do, every time you switch patients, every time you refresh your schedule, you actually eat up some of that memory. So if you don't periodically exit, this is up on the toolbar, and this is not tapping out and it's not hitting the red X. It's literally pressing this exit door. I call it shut the door or close the door. You need to do that periodically throughout the day. And what that does is that resets your virtual memory. So you want to save anything that's open, but it prevents you from actually losing the information in the process. So if you do that a couple times a day, that will save that freeze. That will solve that freezing problem. They're working on increasing the virtual memory. They're working on a different solution, but in the time being, this is something that we can do to save us having to call the help desk and having them kick us off the server. The exit button is big to stop that freezing situation. We're going to talk about where can we be. So if you can just think about the possibility of integrating any part of what's been presented to this point, whether it be a care team approach, a targeted chart prep, or simply implementing some small change in process that can potentially make a significant impact on your workflow, think of what we can all do regardless of our volume, our specialty, or the diversity of our clinics. So Michael Phelps didn't get to the top of his game by treading water. He dedicated significant time to deliberate practice of his skill. I would also imagine that he didn't get to the end results by deciding to train to win the race by simply swimming every day. He mastered every part of the start, every part of the stroke, and every part of the turn along the way to produce the end result of winning. There's obvious motivation when it comes to a sports competition. In our line of work, each of us have different motivators and goals. But to reach those goals, each of us have to invest deliberate effort to get there. We also have to build a team surrounding us in order to help us be successful and allow us to remember and focus on why we're all here, but most importantly, focus on delivering the highest quality of care to our patients. So, questions and comments? I know I ate up a lot of time.
And so in your experience, how do people learn that most efficiently? Get to the point, let's say we're going to get to your level, but just get to the point where people can move into that top tier of using Cerner pretty effectively.
Yeah, so that's what we're working on in my region. With the time that I have, I'm really trying to figure out the answer to that. I know that there are challenges with trying to learn something in the middle of your work day, and change is hard, and learning something new, you have that muscle memory, and even after I changed, my hand kept going back to the old way. So it's a commitment. So I think, in my experience so far, the first step is to start having the conversation. So it's, to start talking about it and find out who among our peers that know what we do and how we do it are really effective, and let them, be leaders and try to learn from each other. In my region, actually, I gave a talk similar to this, and I got about 20 volunteers to do a dedicated after hours training session, because a lot of them don't have favorites. Like, they want to build favorites. Oh, I got to build my favorites. Oh, I got to build my favorites. But it's like 3 months later and still haven't gotten around to it, right? So like carving out some dedicated time to really commit. Because again, going back to what I said before, is the tendency is to really overvalue what you'll lose, which is a little bit of time, but really not appreciate the huge effect that it can make on your efficiency. Even just for me, that quick orders thing was really my satisfaction. I was already pretty satisfied. It made a difference in my day. So I think it starts with having those of us that want help or are interested in taking advantage of some of the new solutions to really take the lead and take the initiative, so that others can follow, because somebody has to be the first until we have more resources available in each region.
Have you used the new Cerner tools to identify people within your market that really did need some additional help?
Yes. Yes.
And how has that been received?
Well, what we've done is actually have them block an hour or so out of their schedule. So deliberately setting time. Time is the big, I think, for all of us. We're all busy. We all have, a lot on our plates, and we have what we're doing there, and then we move on to the next. So I think it's time, and that's a difficult ask sometimes. Again, it could be lost productivity, access to care, lots of different things. But I think the time investment on the part of the providers is really the important part, and it starts with being willing, seeing the value in that time investment. Some things you can pick up in 15 minutes. Other things, like really building out your favorites and customizing your quick orders page, that could take a couple of hours. But I think back to when we all learned, like in the Go Live, it was this big rollout, and they cut back all of our schedules, and we had all these people around to help us, but with all of the changes that are continuing and coming out, we don't for ourselves, but also there hasn't been that same sort of investment. So instead of standing on the escalator waiting for somebody to come and fix it, I think we can definitely step up ourselves and start to if you're interested, really reach out and learn more. There are lots of resources available to learn more, should you choose to go look for them. And the more interest that there is in really engaging and hey, we really want to learn more, we're really interested, the more leverage is the wrong word, but the more of us that are not complaining, but actually looking for solutions and willing to put effort in, then I think the resources will start to follow. I think the peer-to-peer learning, if you find something that like is, wow, this changed my life, I think it's really important to start sharing with your peers. So you can eliminate that first slide, 34 minutes one doctor and 13 minutes. You're never going to get to the point where everybody sees the same, right? But at least the parts of that are due to specifically inefficiencies in using the system or a lack of knowledge of the new solutions, you can scrunch that down a little bit. Yes?
How much of this work relates to what you do in with the patient versus what you do out?
Which you mean the first part of the presentation?
So all of this, we're talking time. I mean, 13 minutes outside of the patient, that puts you at 30 minutes plus per patient, and that still is going to put everybody out in the other stuff. So is this, a lot of this is done in the room, out of the room?
Well, I think the key here is that there's a tremendous amount of variability in how we see our patients and how we use the system. Some of us have staff propose orders for us. Some of us don't like to document in the room. Some of us dictate, some of us type. So I think I'm getting your question, but kind of I think the overall point here is that when you break it down by task, kind of like the Michael Phelps analogy, like when you're learning each part of the task, right? There are certain ways, like each part of that, there's the best, most efficient way to do it. So like each task that we do, regardless of how it all gets put together, those are the opportunities to save time. How you use the rest of the time, I mean, that's personal, really. I mean, you can't, like the provider that spends 34 minutes in chart review, right? I mean, you can't necessarily say, well, don't look so much, right? Like, stop reading every single thing about the patient. But what you can do is you can find ways to improve in how they're placing orders and how the way that they're actually accessing the information, setting up document filters. So when they're looking if they're spending 20 minutes at the time actually reading and 10 minutes looking, you can turn that into 2 minutes looking and 10 minutes reading. So you can, you're not changing what you do, you're just changing the actual steps that it takes to get there. Because those are that's the whole prescription approach. Like those are, I don't want to say non-negotiable, but like there are certain most efficient steps to do a certain task. Not to see your patient, but to complete the task necessary to do what we need to do to get the patient, taken care of. Did that answer your question? Any other questions? Thank you.